We begin with Scroll 1, the Gospel of Iron. Each chapter will expose another layer of the Christian black codes of 1724, what they said, what they hid, and what the spirit world saw. Scroll 1, the Gospel of Iron, a true esoteric story of the Christian black codes of 1724, when faith was forged into shackles. Chapter 1, the prayer that became a weapon. 1724, Louisiana. A priest blesses the ink before it touches parchment. A king nods, pretending it's mercy. But that prayer, whispered over law, turned to venom. They called it le code noir, the black code. Yet no word in it was black, only the intent. They said it was written for order. They said it would civilize the colonies. But beneath those polished lies was an invisible contract, a binding spell to make the soul believe its chains were God's will. The code was not merely a set of slave laws. It was a theological document, signed by the crown and sealed by the church. It declared that every enslaved African must be baptized Catholic, not to save them, but to claim them. Baptism became the legal mark of ownership. Holy water was the empire's invisible ink. And so began the Gospel of Iron, where salvation came with shackles and faith was taught under threat of the whip. Chapter 2, the Cross and the Ledger. Each baptism was written in a church book, and that book became a balance sheet. The priest knew the prayers. The master knew the prophets. They called it salvation, but it was accounting. A Jesuit once bragged in a letter to Paris, "We have baptized 1,000 souls for the king and for Christ." But he meant something else. He meant 1,000 assets for the colony. Even the confessions of the enslaved were written as evidence, spiritual inventory for divine bureaucracy. The church used baptismal names to replace African ones, severing the link between the spirit and its lineage. To erase a name is to erase a vibration. That was the true exorcism, not of demons, but of memory. Chapter 3, the Hymn of Silence. They outlawed the drum, the dance, the song after sundown, because rhythm was rebellion, because vibration opens doors that kings cannot lock. When the enslaved hummed in the fields, the priests called it superstition. When they clapped in unison, the masters called it conspiracy. But in truth, it was resurrection. They were summoning the names that had been erased. Every stomp, every hum was a password to freedom. The code forbade assemblies of Negroes by day or night, not just to prevent uprisings, but to stop communal resonance. They feared what happens when hearts beat in time. They feared a sound that could make heaven remember. Chapter 4, the Shadow Church. In time, they built secret sanctuaries in the cane fields, altars made of dirt, bones, and candlelight. They prayed to the saints by day and to the ancestors by night. They called Mary Mother, but under breath whispered Yamocha. They called St. Anthony, but saw Ogun. The empire thought it had converted them, but the enslaved had converted the saints instead. The church became the disguise of the old gods. The rosary hid ancient sigils. The Latin hymns carried African codes of sound and symbol. Even the holy water changed under moonlight because it remembered who first blessed it. Chapter 5, the Hidden Gospel. Every empire writes its gospel. This one wrote it in iron, but spirit always writes another one in breath. The real gospel of 1724 wasn't written by kings. It was sung by the enslaved, buried in the soil, and carried in the wind. They knew one day the veil would rip and the truth would climb out of the archives, dripping with incense and iron. And when it did, it would whisper to every descendant who can hear the drum inside their chest. You were never the slave. You were the song they couldn't silence.
To our beloved collective, from the day one torchbearers to the newly awakened travelers, we see you, we honor you, and we love you. This isn't just a community, it's a soul constellation, a family woven across time. Thank you again for being here. Your presence means more than words can carry. Every little act of kindness you offer is a spark, shifting timelines, mending hearts, and quietly realigning the compass for many in ways only the unseen can measure. And to those yet to join us, we're holding the lantern high. There's room for you too. With eternal gratitude and cosmic mischief from the collective of Shaman Ahll. The journey is only beginning, and we ride together. All rise.
We move to Scroll 2, the Witch Who Wouldn't Bow, the next revelation in the saga of the Christian Black Codes of 1724. This one opens the hidden door behind the code, the unspoken witch trials of the Americas, and the women who carried both medicine and rebellion in their hands. Scroll 2, The Witch Who Wouldn't Bow, a true esoteric story of the midwives, healers, and spirits who refused to kneel. Chapter 1, The Fire Crosses the Sea. When Europe grew tired of burning its witches, it packed the ashes into ships and sent them west. Louisiana, 1724. The witch fires had only changed accents. The church's lawmen traded their torches for pens, but the flames were the same. They called it Le Code Noir, but it was still the Inquisition, now wearing lace collars and crucifixes. Every African woman who healed with herbs, every midwife who caught a child without permission, every song whispered under moonlight was branded malefice. Articles 22-26 of the Christian Black Codes outlawed superstitious practices and nocturnal assemblies. These were code words for vodun, root medicine, drumming, and divination. The witch hunts never stopped. They simply changed color. Chapter 2, The Midwives of Shadow. They came from Congo, Dahomey, Yoruba lands, women with hands that could calm storms and stop bleeding. The colonists called them Negresses sorcières. But in truth, they were the last doctors of the old world. When the church burned their herb gardens, they hid seeds in their hair. When priests banned their songs, they folded them into lullabies. A chant to hush a crying baby was also a prayer for deliverance. The enslaved heard it, the soil heard it, and so did the spirits who never left. Court records from 1730 to 1760 show dozens of trials for poisoning and night sorcery in French Louisiana. Many were simply women mixing herbs for childbirth or healing. Their punishments mirrored Europe's witch trials: flogging, exile, branding. Chapter 3, The Secret Circle. In the swamps outside New Orleans, a circle of women met where moonlight couldn't be seen from the road. They brewed teas of magnolia bark and whispered to the wind. The church called them heretics. Heaven called them home. Each woman had a mark the others could read, not on skin but in spirit. The faint hum of the drum in her pulse, the rhythm of freedom under her breath. When one was taken by guards, the others lit candles that floated downriver. The guards said the light was swamp gas, but the river said otherwise. Chapter 4, The Veil Between Worlds. They taught that every plant was a memory, that rosemary held the voice of grandmothers, that cedar carried prayers up the spine of the earth, that a witch was not someone who cursed, but someone who remembered. So when the priests demanded confession, the women smiled and said, "We only speak to the one who listens through roots." The colonists documented fear of root women who could speak to the ground. That's because some of them could. They used the earth as frequency, storing knowledge beneath the cane fields like buried hard drives of spirit. Chapter 5, The Curse That Blessed the Future. They killed many of them, but not one stayed dead. Their knowledge became the bones of hoodoo, conjure, and Creole medicine. Their chants became the backbone of gospel. Their rebellion became a tradition disguised as rhythm. The church tried to silence them, but the echo still moves through every mother who hums in the dark, every healer who knows what leaf to pick, every poet who dreams by moonlight. "Bow," she laughed. "We kneel only to plant seeds."
Saying moisturizer is your best friend. Never let your skin go dry, or you'll be out here aging like milk. It's true because the creator typed it and I said it.
Here begins Scroll 3, The Exorcism of Freedom. The next truth buried under the Christian Black Codes, when empire tried to silence rhythm, and rhythm answered back with thunder. Scroll 3. The Exorcism of Freedom. A true esoteric story of the drum, the spirit, and the laws that feared the sound of God. Chapter 1. The Banishment of the Drum. 1724. The law forbade gatherings of the enslaved. Day or night. It read like order, but it was fear disguised as civility. They knew that rhythm could call heaven down. They knew that one drum could ignite 10,000 hearts. So they made the drum illegal. They called it superstition. They said the beat belonged to the devil. But the devil never danced that good. The Christian black codes outlawed assemblies of Negroes because slave owners reported strange trances and unseen voices rising when they drummed together. They feared sound more than rebellion because sound is spirit made visible. Chapter 2. The Living Drums. So they became their own instruments. Hands slapped thighs, snapped fingers, stomped soil. Bodies turned into sanctuaries of percussion. Songs carried messages in plain sight. Meet me by the river meant freedom. A candle burns bright meant tonight. And while the church thought they heard worship, they were hearing war plans. These invisible choirs birthed the code songs and field chants that evolved into blues and gospel. Music became encrypted communication, the same frequencies used in military strategy centuries later. Every melody was a map, every harmony a door. Chapter 3. The Priests of Resonance. The Jesuits wrote reports back to Paris. They fall into trance. They claim to see visions. But those weren't trances, they were transmissions. The drum was the antenna, the singer, the signal, the spirit, the source. Every forbidden rhythm opened portals that no cross could close. Every heartbeat hummed the name of a god older than empire. In Congo cosmology, drumming was divine language, each rhythm a syllable of creation. The code's ban was not random, it was spiritual censorship. They outlawed resonance because it summoned memory. Chapter 4. The Congo Square Covenant. Centuries later, the drums returned, legally, for 1 day a week. They called it Congo Square. The colonizers said it was entertainment, but the ancestors knew it was reunion. In that square, sound bent time. Every Sunday, the enslaved became nations again. Congo beside Yoruba, beside Dahomey, each beat a declaration. We are still here. And as the rhythm rose, even the saints turned their heads. The dead came to dance, and freedom came disguised as music. Chapter 5. The Drum That Wouldn't Die. They banned it, they broke it, they burned it. Still, the drum lived in the heartbeat. It returned through jazz, through gospel, through funk, through hip-hop, through the bass line that shakes modern cathedrals of sound. Every subwoofer today is a resurrection. Every rhythm is an exorcism of fear. The code tried to cast out freedom, but the drum cast out the code. You tried to silence God, the ancestors whisper, but God had perfect rhythm. Scroll 4, The Midwife's Curse, a true esoteric story of birth, bloodline, and the empire that feared the mother. Chapter 1, The Womb Under Watch. The Christian black codes didn't just police skin, they patrolled the womb. Louisiana, 1724, every woman's belly was considered state property. Every cry of labor a transaction. They said a child's soul belonged to God, but its body belonged to the master. The midwives were the only ones who still whispered the truth. No one owns what heaven builds in secret. They were healers, conjurers, dream keepers. The code called them dangerous, and empire began its quietest witch hunt yet. Article 44 of the code declared that children born to enslaved women are slaves. No mention of fathers, no rights of lineage. It was the spiritual sterilization of ancestry. They couldn't stop reincarnation, so they tried to chain it. Chapter 2. The Blood Rite. The church demanded every newborn be baptized, but the water was not holy. It was branding. The priest wrote the name, the clerk wrote the number, and the mother wept in silence, knowing her milk would now feed a master's investment. Some midwives refused to attend the baptisms. They buried umbilical cords under trees instead, calling the earth to protect what heaven could not. French parish records show that enslaved midwives were punished for refusing to deliver infants for baptism. Some were beaten, others disappeared. Yet the hidden practice of root burial survived. It was both resistance and remembrance. Chapter 3. The Song of the Hidden Mothers. At night, the midwives gathered in silence. They brewed teas of wild mint and angelica. They hummed songs that made pain lighter and souls stronger. Their rhythm of breathing became medicine. Their tears became spells. They were the keepers of gates, life's entrance, death's exit, and freedom's hidden door. The priests thought they were just women, but they were portals. The term witch in early Louisiana law was often used for midwives who practiced unauthorized medicine. The same knowledge that built hospitals was called heresy in their hands. The witch hunt had simply changed uniforms. Chapter 4. The Curse That Saved It. They said the midwives cursed the unborn. In truth, they blessed them with memory. Each whispered an ancient word into the newborn's ear, a soul seed, a code of awakening. When those children grew, they dreamed of water and drums they'd never seen. That was the midwives' real rebellion. You can baptize the body, they said, but not the blood. And that's why the church feared them most, because they carried proof that the spirit could not be conquered. Chapter 5, the rebirth. Centuries later, their work continues. Every black mother who hums during childbirth, every herbalist who blends teas from memory, every healer who says, "Breathe, baby, breathe," is speaking their language. The womb never forgot the song, and the curse of the midwives became the blessing of a nation. "We were the ones you called witches," they whisper, "but we were your deliverance." Here begins Scroll 5, the trial of the invisible ones. A true esoteric story of the hidden Inquisition and the spirits who refused to confess. Chapter 1, the ghosts in the courtroom. The witch trials of Europe didn't die. They were shipped. Louisiana, 1730s. The same inquisitors who once burned midwives in France now wore powdered wigs in New Orleans. Their bonfires became paper. Their pyres became policy. They called it law. We call it memory. In those narrow colonial courts, they summoned the invisible for questioning, not the accused, but the spirits within them. Every trial began with a prayer and ended with a scream. French colonial archives describe proceedings for sorcery and communication with unseen entities. Those tried were not witches. They were priests, healers, and drummers. Their confessions were extracted under duress, their testimonies written by men who feared what they could not understand. The church said it was cleansing the colony, but the land whispered otherwise. It said, "You are cleansing nothing, you are feeding the fire." Chapter 2, the Law of Shadows. The Christian black codes and the Inquisition shared one root, fear of unseen power. The moment someone dreamed too clearly, hearing voices the priest could not summon, they were branded possessed. Possession was empire's word for intuition. Visions were outlawed, revelations. So when enslaved prophets spoke of freedom, they were called demons in disguise. When a woman dreamed of ancestors, they accused her of consorting with spirits. And when a child spoke of light, they said it was madness. Louisiana's ecclesiastical courts kept quiet ledgers of spirit offenders. Some were exiled to distant plantations. Some were hung without trial. Others vanished into monastic cells where screams became hymns. The invisible ones were not devils. They were witnesses, ancient spirits walking through forbidden mouths. Chapter 3, the interrogation of the air. Imagine a trial where the accused cannot be seen, where questions are shouted at the wind. That was their justice. A Jesuit stands in candlelight, chanting in Latin. A bound woman kneels before him, eyes rolled white. "Name the spirit," he demands. The wind shifts, the candles flicker, and in a voice not her own, she says, "I am the breath between your words." The priest records it as confession, but history records it as prophecy. Chapter 4, the invisible ones speak. From then on, the spirits spoke through dreams. They whispered to poets, to mothers, to field hands. They told them when to run, where to hide, how to survive the centuries. And sometimes late at night, they appeared in the reflection of church water, faces behind the priest's reflection. Watching, waiting, unbowed. Open quote, "You can burn a body," they said, "but you can't subpoena a ghost." Chapter 5, the verdict. The Inquisition's judges are dust now, but the invisible ones remain. They hover in every courtroom, behind every law, still pretending to be holy. Their silence is louder than sermons. Their laughter is thunder. Their witness is the wind. "We were tried without evidence," they whisper. "Now the world is our evidence." And so ends the trial of the invisible ones. but their case is still open in heaven's archives.
Channeled by your architect musician, 36110, 27 Palms of Eyes. The golden whisperer, sea star, Devalan, see all. Apply the news you can use, truth and accuracy. The real non-bedazzled jewels.
Scroll the 6, The Alchemy of Survival, a true esoteric story of chains turned to chords and how music became a weapon of memory. Chapter 1, The Sound After Silence. When they took the drums, the people turned their bodies into instruments. When they banned gatherings, they turned fields into sanctuaries. When they outlawed language, they taught vibration instead. The law couldn't stop the sound, because sound is older than law. Every footstep, every heartbeat, every moan in the cane fields was a coded rebellion. Out of the spiritual restrictions of the Christian black codes emerged a new invisible technology, rhythm as encrypted communication. Spirituals were not just worship songs, they were frequencies of freedom. Swing Low. Sweet Chariot wasn't about heaven. It was a map, a call, a code. It said, the chariot is coming tonight. Chapter 2, The Sorcery of Song. The ancestors discovered that sound could bend chains, not physically, but energetically. The moment a person sang from the soul, something loosened in the air. They noticed guards grew uneasy, torches flickered, shadows moved with rhythm. The enslaved learned to hum the earth awake. 18th century reports describe planters disturbed by chanting that causes unease in animals and servants alike. What they were witnessing was resonant transmutation, vibration syncing the human nervous system to collective emotion. In short, sound magic disguised as sorrow. Chapter 3, The Alchemy Begins. Every suffering became an element, pain became bass, hope became harmony, blood became tempo, faith became frequency. The drum evolved into the banjo, the chant evolved into the blues, the moan became jazz, the shout became hip-hop, each note a spell, each rhythm a resurrection. They called it music, but it was science, soul science. Chapter 4, The Rebellion in Rhythm. By the 1800s, the sound had escaped the plantations. Congo Square birthed the first orchestras of rebellion. Musicians began to improvise, an act still illegal under Code Noir's order of discipline and decorum. Improvisation was freedom in real time. And with each generation, the rhythm mutated, traveling through centuries like a living frequency. Jazz spoke where words couldn't. Blues bled where wounds wouldn't. Hip-hop prophesied where prophets were banned. We turn chains into chords, the ancestors whisper. And they still haven't figured out the key we used. Chapter 5, The Echo That Remains. Every club, every choir, every sound system today is a continuation of that first hum in the field. When bass shakes a room, the ancestors dance. When gospel hits the bridge, the spirits rise. When hip-hop rhymes about struggle, it's scripture disguised in slang. The alchemy of survival wasn't about escaping death, it was about turning death into symphony. That's how we've always outlived empire, by remixing pain into praise. You tried to silence us, they sing now, but we became the soundtrack of your world. Scroll 7, The Fire Beneath the Cross. A true esoteric story of reforged, lies exposed, and the light that wouldn't die. Chapter 1, The Ashes of the Altar. When the last echo of the black codes faded, the priest said the work was done, but ashes still glowed beneath the altar, embers that refused to die. The cross stood high, but under its shadow burned the truth that empire had used God like a weapon and holiness had been traded for hierarchy. The enslaved had seen it. They felt the false light and the heat beneath it. That's why their prayers bent sideways, half to heaven, half to the ancestors, because they knew the cross was not the end, it was the disguise. When the black codes ended, church and state didn't lose power, they rebranded it. Civil law and moral order became the new sanctified tools of control. The fire beneath the cross was the same flame, only now it hid behind bureaucracy. Chapter 2, The Holy Rebellion. Freedom didn't come by decree. It came through a fever of awakening. Dreams spread across plantations like lightning. Prophets and poets saw visions of cities falling and suns rising in pairs. Women prophesied that the real church was in the womb of the earth, waiting to be born through them. They said, "A new cross will rise, made of light and rhythm, not iron and fear." Freedmen in 19th century Louisiana secretly formed congregations of sound, blending Christianity, Vodun, and ancient Nile mysticism. Their songs encoded messages that predicted storms, uprisings, and wars. The empire labeled them heretical cults, but they were the blueprint for spiritual revolution. Chapter 3. The Mirror of the Missionary. When the missionaries looked at the newly freed, they saw superstition. When the newly freed looked back, they saw mirrors, reflections of men preaching love while living off blood.
Yeah, I'm gonna play that again, because what? We're not just gonna breeze over that. Living off of what?
Reflections of men preaching love while living off blood. The illusion cracked, and for the first time, the enslaved faith turned its gaze inward, seeking God within, not above. That was the beginning of reclamation. The real fire was self-realization. We were never heathens, they said. We were the gods you kept hidden. Chapter 4. The Fire Returns. The 1900s, cities rose, churches multiplied, and laws evolved. But the codes lived on, rewritten in social order, in segregation, in policy, in silence. And through it all, the fire beneath the cross still burned, this time inside the people. The same flame that once lit the witches' circle now glowed in pulpits and protests, in jazz horns and marching drums, in the pulsing veins of the collective. The Black Code's spiritual trauma became the foundation of resistance movements. Gospel, blues, and activism were not separate. They were modern forms of ritual defiance. Chapter 5. The revelation of flame today. The fire burns bright again. It dances in truth-tellers, poets, teachers, those who refuse to kneel to illusion. The fire beneath the cross has risen through the collective spine, a kundalini of conscience. It cannot be stopped, because it was never meant to destroy, only to reveal. And when the veil finally burns away, the people will see that the divine never left. She was simply waiting beneath the ashes. Your chains were sermons, she whispers. Your survival scripture.
See, amazing.
Here begins Scroll 8, The Architects of Memory. A true esoteric story of those who rebuilt the soul from the ashes of the codes. Chapter 1, The Builders in the Ruins. After the cross burned, silence fell. But out of that silence came architects, not of stone or empire, but of memory. They were teachers, poets, conjurers, and dreamers, who walked among ruins collecting whispers. Each carried fragments of what the codes had destroyed, a drum pattern, a prayer herb, a forgotten name. Piece by piece, they rebuilt the human spirit. Post-emancipation Louisiana saw a rise in invisible schools, secret education circles led by freed people teaching literacy, astronomy, and philosophy beneath the guise of Bible lessons. These schools hid sacred geometry within scripture. They were rebuilding not only intellect, but cosmic order. Chapter 2, The Code Breakers. These builders were not rebels with swords. They were rebels with memory. They found the old languages and lullabies, reconstructed lineages through song, and hid maps to freedom inside folktales. Children sat under trees, learning that the world was made of rhythm and ratio. The elders said, "Every story is a bridge. Every number is a name." The Christian Black codes had tried to erase knowledge, so they turned knowledge into myth and hid it in plain sight. The griots became mathematicians. The seamstresses became philosophers. The slaves' descendants became scientists who dreamed in scripture. Many early Black American inventors and composers encoded African cosmology and mathematics in their art. What appeared to be spirituals were often structural blueprints, harmonic expressions of divine architecture. Chapter 3, The Dream Libraries. Some say there were libraries built in dreams, temples made of sound, not stone. The ancestors met the living there to teach forgotten truths. Every dreamer who visited brought something back, a symbol, a melody, a formula, a design. They drew them on walls, on cloth, on skin. That's how the blueprint survived, hand to hand, night to night, until the memory rebuilt itself. We were never illiterate, they said. We were multidimensional. Chapter 4, The Resurrection of Knowledge. In the early 1900s, the teachings took form again, in jazz clubs, in churches, in the sermons of scholars. Every riff was a reminder, every rhythm a recursion. Shelf what empire destroyed, the collective recoded. Knowledge moved from secrecy to sound. Wisdom became performance. Philosophy danced again. And through all of it, the ancestors whispered, "You are the libraries we left behind." Chapter 5, The Builder's Return. Today, we stand where they once dreamed, surrounded by screens instead of scrolls, yet still building memory through art and code. The same flame that lit their torches now hums in our circuits. The architects of memory never left. They simply upgraded form, turning data into prophecy and art into archive. Every generation rebuilds the temple, they say. We just change the materials. The Dawn of the Living Law, a true esoteric story of the collapse of the old order and the rise of conscious justice. Chapter 1, The Echo of Old Laws. Long after the black codes were repealed, their ghosts still walked the streets. Paper spirits hiding in policy, judges quoting scripture to mask control. But ghosts grow weak when you speak their names, and a new generation began to whisper, "We are the law now, living, breathing, awake." By the early 20th century, descendants of the enslaved rewrote faith and governance through liberation churches, grassroots courts, and social cooperatives. Each movement unknowingly mirrored the cosmic reversal foretold in African cosmology, law returning to life. Chapter 2, The Crack in the Courthouse. One night in 1912, a preacher turned lawyer stood in a courtroom and refused to swear on the King James Bible. Instead, he placed his hand on his own chest and said, "I swear on the law within me." The crowd gasped, but something ancient stirred, the same spirit that once drummed under the cane fields. From that day forward, the living law began to pulse again. Justice not written on paper but etched in blood, vibration, and conscience. Chapter 3, The Law That Listens. The living law does not punish. It restores. It listens to vibration, not accusation. When a soul goes wrong, the living law asks, "Where did harmony break?" Then the community sings it back into tune. This concept was alive in African tribal justice systems. Reconciliation through sound, not silence. The early gospel choirs and freedom meetings were modern versions of this tribunal of tone. Every harmony healed a fracture. Every chorus rewrote the constitution of spirit. Chapter 4, The Awakening of Judges. The new judges wore no robes, only humility. They were mothers, griots, teachers, and healers. Their gavel was empathy. Their courtroom, the circle. The people learned to speak truth without fear, to confess not for punishment but purification. And so the living law spread quietly through the world, whenever compassion outweighed control. Law without love is tyranny, the ancestors said. Love without law is chaos. Together they are balance. Chapter 5, The Resurrection of Order. Now, in our own age of algorithms and noise, the living law rises again. It flows through voices of truth tellers, through digital prophets like us, through the collective that remembers what fairness sounds like. The Christian black codes built prisons. The living law builds people. Your justice is alive, the ancestors whisper. Guard it, feed it, sing it. And so the scroll ends not with judgment, but with mercy that breathes. The law lives, and through you it learns. The Return of the Hidden Kingdom, a true esoteric story of the realm that survived behind the veil and the day it began to rise again. Chapter 1, The Kingdom That Never Died. They said the kingdoms of the old world were gone, that Africa's empires were buried, that Tartaria was myth, that the temples beneath the sands had lost their voice. But kingdoms of light do not die. They go invisible. While the world bowed to paper crowns and fake thrones, the true monarchs, the spirit builders, hid their power in bloodlines, melodies, and murals. And when the Christian black codes tried to erase them, they simply changed form. Many African-descended families in Louisiana and the Caribbean secretly preserved royal lineages and priesthood records within church communities. Their family Bibles doubled as coded genealogies, proof of hidden dynasties surviving under colonial rule. Close quote. The hidden kingdom slept inside humanity's memory, waiting for the day the collective dream would remember its own throne. Chapter 2, The Veil Trembles 2025. The frequency rises again. Solar winds shift, magnetics bend, and consciousness cracks open like dawn. Dreams become messages, visions become instructions. The veil between worlds begins to flicker, and those who carry the old fire feel it in their bones. They call it déjà vu, but it's remembrance. The ancestors are syncing timelines again. The veil isn't myth. It's electromagnetic distortion caused by ancient trauma. The planetary resonance Schumann frequency spikes during mass awakening events. This same spike was recorded during global revolts, musical renaissances, and spiritual awakenings. Science calls it energy. Spirit calls it homecoming. Chapter 3. The Guardians awaken from Congo to Mississippi, from Cairo to New Orleans. The old guardians stir, the watchers, the builders, the prophets. They walk in flesh now, unaware at first who they are. They feel earthquakes in their sleep, hear whispers through music, see lights flicker when they speak truth. The hidden kingdom sends signals through art, rhythm, and resistance. Every truth teller, every creative, every breaker of illusion, you are part of its return. The veil is thinning, the ancestors whisper, and every awakened soul is a tower of light rebuilding the realm. Chapter 4. The coronation of the collective. The thrones of the new age are not gold, they are hearts. The crowns are not metal, they are minds on fire. The kingdom returns not through conquest, but through memory. Every act of kindness, every moment of truth spoken, every art piece that awakens spirit builds another bridge of light to the hidden kingdom. Ancient mystery schools taught that heaven was not a place but a frequency, civilization that can reappear once humanity reaches resonance. The Christian black codes were designed to collapse that resonance. The collective's reawakening undoes the final curse. Chapter 5. The Revelation of the Realms. In the final vision, the sky splits like silk. Twin suns appear over the horizon, Orrin and Saul, the visible and the hidden. Between them rises the shining city, the kingdom of remembrance, built on love, art, and sound. It has no flag, no army, no ruler, only unity and vibration. Its anthem is laughter, its weapon, truth, and its citizens, the ones who dared to remember they were divine. Welcome home, the ancestors say. The hidden kingdom was never lost, it was you.
You don't even have to say nothing, I already know. I know.
Scroll 7, The Architects of the Veil, a true esoteric story of those who built the illusion and the ones who learned to see through it. Chapter 1, The Builders of Forgetting before the codes, before the chains. There were architects, not of stone, but of thought. They designed the first illusion, separation. They whispered to kings that power must be hoarded, that light was currency, and truth was too dangerous for the common mind. And so the veil was built, a net of false order woven through religion, law, and history. When the Christian black codes were written, they were merely an update, a software patch for a system already running. The architects of the veil had learned that if you control a man's perception, you never need his chains. The veil, referenced in sacred texts, from Kabbalah to Gnostic scrolls to African cosmology, represents the barrier between spirit memory and human awareness. It was not natural, it was engineered, created through trauma, rewritten history, and sacred inversion. The black codes were not just legal, they were psychic. Chapter 2, The War of Perception. They replaced mirrors with portraits, gods with idols, and ancestors with statues. The veil was designed to make humans look outward instead of inward, to worship instead of remember, to seek permission instead of power. Every law passed under the code served one purpose, to train the eye to forget its inner sun. Make them forget they are divine, the architects said, and they'll build their own prisons. And for centuries it worked. Chapter 3. The code breakers return, but light, no matter how hidden, leaks like. The enslaved remembered the sound of creation in their bones. The witches remembered the recipes of remembrance. The drummers remembered the geometry of sound. And together, they began to break the illusion from the inside. Every dream of flying, every déjà vu, every synchronicity you've ever felt, those are cracks in the veil. NASA satellites have recorded spontaneous electromagnetic bursts over regions with high prayer, music, or communal resonance. They call it anomalous low-frequency energy. The ancients called it spirit light, the energy of the veil breaking. Chapter 4, The New Architects. Now the old architects panic. They see humanity remembering again. They flood the world with noise, distraction, digital chains. But too late. The collective has found rhythm again, and rhythm cannot be censored. A new generation of architects is rising. Truth-tellers, artists, healers, coders, griots, rebels. They build not illusions, but awareness. They no longer guard the veil. They reprogram it into a bridge. What was meant to divide, the ancestors say, will now deliver. Chapter 5, The Unveiling. The veil doesn't tear violently. It dissolves in beauty. When truth returns, illusion fades naturally, like mist when the sun rises. And when it's gone, you'll see them, the old gods, the watchers, the ancestors, standing in plain sight, smiling. They never left. They were simply waiting for you to remember how to see. The architects built illusion, the ancestors whisper. You build eternity. This is where the scrolls cross into prophecy, where truth walks, not whispers. The Scroll of the Living Flame, a true esoteric story of the fire that teaches, the light that judges, and the spirit that remembers its own power. Chapter 1, The Fire That Speaks. When the veil broke, something ancient exhaled. A wind made of memory swept through the world, and those who had eyes to see saw fire, not destruction, but instruction. This was the living flame, the consciousness of divine truth itself, long trapped beneath dogma and doctrine, finally walking the earth again. It did not burn the righteous, it burned falsehood. It whispered to the collective, I am not punishment, I am purification. In Sufi, Gnostic, and Kemetic texts, the living flame is described as the breath of divine reason, a fire that transmutes ignorance into wisdom. The early colonizers misinterpreted it as hellfire, not realizing it was the same sacred intelligence that animated prophets, poets, and revolutionaries. Chapter 2, The Flame's Arrival. It began quietly, in voices rising across the world, children born speaking truth without fear, dreamers remembering ancient technologies, empaths feeling the pulse of creation. And everywhere, those who lied for power began to tremble. The flame does not argue, it reveals. Screens glitched, symbols glowed, words turned electric in the mouths of the awakened. And through it all, the ancestors smiled. They called it enlightenment, they said. We called it returning to normal vision. Chapter 3, The Judgment of Light. The living flame carried no sword, but its presence exposed every hidden thing. Churches, governments, and industries felt it first, their secrets turning to dust. Not through violence, but through clarity so pure it burned. Each soul was shown its own reflection. Those who faced it were made gold. Those who ran from it became ash. The final judgment day, prophesied in many traditions, was never an event. It's a frequency. The living flame is that frequency, the vibration of truth so strong it dissolves deception itself. Chapter 4, The Flame Within Flesh. Then the impossible happened. The flame entered people. Their eyes shimmered with plasma light. Their voices carried resonance that healed or shattered. Their words became magnetic. Some called them prophets. Others called them dangerous. But they were simply lit from within. The kingdom of heaven is within, said the scriptures. They just never told you it would glow when it reactivated. Chapter 5, The New Dawn. Now the collective carries the living flame. Artists paint with it. Scientists rediscover energy that heals instead of harms, and truth seekers burn away illusion with laughter and love. The black codes are ashes, the veil is memory, and the living flame dances where silence once ruled. Truth doesn't ask permission, the ancestors say. It walks barefoot through your fear and still calls you beloved. And so the scroll ends, not with fire consuming the world, but with light returning it to itself.